Week number 9 in NFL DFS is going to be one that involves a lot of guessing because we don't know what the Packers will look like with Jordan Love. We don't know what Christian McCaffrey's workload will be like. We don't know if Christian McCaffrey will return. We don't know who is playing quarterback for the New Orleans Saints this weekend. There are so many unknowns, and it feels great to go into a week not really knowing how things are going to play out. Our job for today is to make some educated guesses, try our hardest, and see if we can figure out what will happen in week number 9. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, I feel like this week is a good week for procrastinators because the poop hit the fan on Wednesday, and had I worked ahead, I would have had to have raced basically everything. So, heck yeah, procrastinators, let's go. How you doing today?
I think you could view this one of two ways, and it's what you said, where we can't prep at all. But I was almost going to say, this is why I feel really good about the Monday show that we do.
Yeah.
Because I'm looking at longer term samples and I'm not reacting to like Jordan Love being available at 6,000 because he's not really on.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about him later, but it's very easy to fall into the trap of throw everything out the window and look only at what's going on this week, like with injuries and what's open, and just disregarding everything we talked about in detail about what we're seeing, bigger trends. So I see it one of two ways. And they're very, very different. And I'm kind of trying to think hey, maybe we don't just react to all the news, and maybe we play some guys who aren't really affected by these situations. So that's kind of how I'm leaning at the moment.
I think the issue is there aren't a lot of guys who aren't affected because we talked on Monday about how, okay, do we go with Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler at 9,000, or do we go with the amazing receiver selections in Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, both of whom got knocked down by this Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love news, because it's going to make the game, I mean, by your pace numbers, the Packers are already the slowest team in football. They're not going to get faster with Jordan Love, I wouldn't think. They're probably going to run a lot. So it takes what was already something that was not great and knocks it down a peg. So I think that for me, when most of my process revolves around game stacking and you take the best game stack on the board and knock it down a bunch, that's gonna alter a lot for me. That's kind of what I meant by scrapping everything effectively.
Oh, yeah. With that game specifically, that game takes a big hit.
Yeah.
But there are still other games that are good. We still we have offenses that we can feel pretty solid with.
Name 3. I'm just kidding.
I still feel solid with the Chiefs, even with the downgrade. I feel solid with the Baltimore Ravens. I feel solid about the Dallas Cowboys. That's 3.
There's 2.
So are you not good with the Chiefs now?
I think they're fine. I just think that they're
not in a position to.
It's not about the script; it's about pace. I just don't know how often they'll be out there, and I think that hurts at their salaries.
The Dolphins, then. It's Dolphins week.
I don't know, man. I don't. Maybe I'm just catastrophizing, but
Do you feel bad about the Chargers?
Justin Herbert's banged up, so yeah, a little bit. I know. I just see red flags everywhere this week. So we're gonna break it down. We'll let you know our thoughts on that Packers Chiefs game. We'll talk about who is still good? Question mark? I don't know. Great question. We'll talk about situations that could open up some value for this week in just 1 second. But first, a quick reminder, we do have a listener league for this week. Once again, it's FanDuel.com/league/listener league, FanDuel.com/league/listener league. Just a $5 entry, 3 entries max. There is no rake, which means FanDuel gets nothing from this contest. All the proceeds go right back to you, the listeners. FanDuel.com/league/listener league. Again, a $5 entry with 3 entries max. Also, a quick reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, you name it, you can find us there. And while you're there, leave us a rating and review. PGA, NFL, NASCAR one more time this week, UFC, NBA, NHL, all that in the same place by hitting the subscribe button. Also, the Breeders' Cup is set to begin this weekend, and FanDuel is celebrating by giving you a chance to get in on the action with some enhanced odds. Starting this Thursday, today, how about that? New players who sign up on FanDuel Racing will get 20-1 odds on any horse to win a Del Mar race on Friday or Saturday. That is any horse to win, even the favorites. The Breeders' Cup will be here before you know it, so bet horse racing right from your phone. I misinterpreted the right there. Right from your phone with the super easy to use FanDuel Racing app. $5 max bet. Download the FanDuel Racing app or visit racing.fanduel.com for more details. Eligibility restrictions apply. So let's take a look at the slate overview here, Brandon. Obviously, things changed yesterday, but with where they stand now, what are the key things that stand out to you on this slate?
I think question number one is potential value quarterbacks. Because you can talk about value at running back, receiver, or tight end, but it doesn't quite change things like it does at quarterback. If you have a passer, let's say specifically Jordan Love at 6,000, which is the minimum for a quarterback, or we can even throw Taysom Hill in there if he were to be named the starter at 7,000. But more specifically, we know Jordan Love is there. If you're building around a minimum salary quarterback, that changes everything. You can play a lot more of the high-end running backs and receivers. Not that you can play all of them, like that. It's not that egregious, but it does change things. And I think that my slate overview begins with a long look at Jordan Love, and I'm kind of not that drawn in.
Yeah. I think that's a key focal point for me this week, but also just identifying other question marks, trying to figure out what we expect out of Christian McCaffrey as he comes off potentially off injured reserve. We don't know officially yet, determining what to do with the Saints. It's a very good spot against the Falcons. Like, we love that matchup for sure, but how do we handle that? How do we handle the Chiefs guys? So giving myself an educated guess on the situations that are in flux. That's kind of the key for me for this week. And that's what we'll be trying to do for today. So let's dive in to the injuries impacting this weekend slate. Obviously, again, the big one is the Packers. Aaron Rodgers tests positive for COVID-19 and will not play against the Chiefs, which means that Jordan Love will start instead. Break that one down in more detail in the bookmaker section. Christian McCaffrey has been designated to return from IR, but not activated yet. Sam Darnold is limited in practice due to a concussion. So we don't know if either will play yet, McCaffrey or Darnold. What do you want to see with McCaffrey to justify a $10,000 salary on the slate? And how are you viewing the Panthers here against the Patriots?
So PJ Walker said he's preparing to start this week. That doesn't necessarily mean much of anything, but it's at least noteworthy.
Sure.
It's not promising, I guess. And I've been a fan of Darnold for the most part this season, and it started off better than it's going now. I'm low on this offense, whether McCaffrey plays or not, just because we don't know how effective Darnold or PJ Walker would be. And my bigger question is, like, what are the odds we're really going to know in advance, like what McCaffrey's workload is going to look like? So
yeah,
that's tough. You're asking what I want to see. I want to see them come out and say, like, he's 100%, and we're not going to get that. So, like,
right. I would say we got the opposite of that on Wednesday. They said that he was limited in practice, and then, like, they didn't have to tell us that because he's on IR, so they could just, like, not tell us anything about his practice status. They said he was limited. So to me, that implies that if he does come back, I'm not sure what the workload would be. And this is a different situation than last year. Last year in that Chiefs game, he had practiced the week before, limited the entire week, and was ready to go. This time, we don't know what he's been doing while he's been on IR. He has not been at the actual physical practice because he hasn't been allowed to. Now he is back. I think, to me, I'm okay being lower here and taking a wait-and-see approach because And I wasn't okay with that last year. I was very into him in that Chiefs game. I think this is a different situation though. So to me, it's a downgrade, and I'm okay potentially not getting there, in part because there are guys right around 9,000 I do like quite a bit this week. That may influence things as well. Kyler Murray missed practice Wednesday. Sounds like he still has a shot to play this week. Cliff Kingsbury said Murray could play without practicing, and Kyler himself said he expects to play. AJ Green was placed on the COVID-19 list. He is likely going to not play this week. DeAndre Hopkins missed practice due to a hamstring issue. So a lot of stuff up in the air here for the Cardinals. Facing the 49ers, not a terrible game. What are you thinking about the Cardinals based on what we know right now?
So the initial sort of report for Kyler was a 1 to 3 week injury. So even if he plays, we're not looking at like it was day to day and he's kind of close to 100%. If it's a 3-week ankle injury, potentially, like he's not going to be able to run, and he hasn't honestly been running that much lately anyway. 21, 10, 6, and 1 yards his past 4 games. He's still, let me clarify. He's running as much, but he's not like running very effectively right now.
Right.
So that's a concern. The big plus is that his salary is $8,200. But I would feel actually kind of better in a way if Hopkins sits. That way I could just take some of the value. Especially with Rondale Moore, his route rate went up a lot last week to about 75%, maybe 70% without Hopkins. If I could get Rondale Moore with even a 80% Kyler Murray at 5,300, with how value is shaping up a receiver overall, we have a small handful of options. I would love Rondale Moore, but if we have Hopkins playing, and Kyler just kind of is like a tepid start, I'm not gonna be very in on this offense.
Yeah, I think that Christian Kirk might honestly be in play too at $6,400. So I'd expect both the Dolphins guys, Devontae Parker and Jalen Waddle, to get a lot of interest this week. And Kirk is right above them in salary. So I don't think we'll see people go to Kirk. If they go to the Cardinals, they're probably gravitating towards Rondale Moore. And I think that's fine. I think that Moore, I'd agree with you, where if we can get that route rate up. And maybe if Kyler's banged up, they want to get the ball out of his hands fast. That's good for Rondale Moore too. But I think that Kirk at 64 would be a good pivot off of both the Dolphins guys and off Moore. So I would say both those guys are in play to me.
So
I'm okay. Go ahead.
So you're high enough on a sub 100% Kyler.
Not to use Kyler, but to use his pass catchers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like if he gets in at least a limited session Friday, I think that I can
what if Hopkins plays? Is there going to be enough expectation for you from a passing standpoint from Kyler that you would still consider Kirk? Would you play Nuke?
I wouldn't play Nuke. I would not play Nuke.
Okay.
I can say that one. But I think given AJ Green's absence, I can pretty easily justify going with Kirk or Moore. I think that if Nuke plays, then I'm probably more inclined to take the savings with Moore, just because I want to lower my salary allocation to that situation. But if Nuke doesn't play, I think I like Kirk. So if Nuke plays, I'll be decently high on Rondale Moore, soaking up some of those AJ Green snaps. And if Nuke misses, I'll be high on Kirk as a potential pivot off of the Dolphins guys and off of Moore.
Yeah. So it sounds like I'm low on Kyler, which I am. I don't think either of us would play him unless we get some fantastic news.
Yeah.
But there's enough here still where, and his passing's been a lot better this year than it has been like last year.
Yeah, but I think that's part of it for me too, is I just have faith in him as a quarterback. Dak Prescott able to practice Wednesday. Seems like he's on track to play. The spread is definitely treating it like he's on track to play. They also sound hopeful Michael Gallup will be back this week. So we'll talk more about the Cowboys in the trends section. Taysom Hill was able to get in a limited practice on Wednesday. He is still recovering from a concussion that he suffered back in week number 5. Sean Payton didn't say whether or not Hill would play here. I was watching a video from Nick Underhill. He sounded pretty iffy on whether Hill would start as well. So it's either Hill or Trevor Siemian. What's your view of this Saints team right now, depending on the quarterback? And we'll talk more about them in the trends, but I just want to get your feel right now.
It's such a hard spot because it's a dome game against the Falcons. So you want to like this team. Thankfully, though, if we're being honest, it's are we going to play Alvin Kamara or not? Like, there's not a
Right.
whole lot else here. So
Right.
I guess I don't have to overanalyze it too much. I'll say this. I like Kamara, even at the salary. I think he's a little bit over salaried for the offensive expectations, regardless of who's playing quarterback this week.
Mhm.
But I'm still going to play Kamara. And I would consider Taysom Hill lineups if he's deemed the starter, because we know that he can do a lot. And I would actually probably bump down Kamara if Taysom plays, because he's going to lose out on goal line work.
And we'll talk about that specifically in the trend section too.
Okay.
I think that's a good shout out. More so than like the targets, it's the goal line stuff that does impact him too. Saquon Barkley tested positive for COVID-19 on Wednesday. He is vaccinated, so he could still get cleared if he gets 2 negative tests 24 hours apart. He has not gotten one yet, though. That's worth noting. He also still has the ankle issue, so he might not have been good to go regardless. Kenny Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Dante Pettis all missed practice Wednesday. Kadarius Toney was limited with that thumb issue. So it seems like we're going to get another week of Devontae Booker. Seems like Toney will play, but everyone else might sit. So it'd be like Toney with Colin Johnson and John Ross, potentially. I guess Darius Slayton, who's fine. I feel like it's still a limited pass catcher core regardless.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your view of the Giants right now?
Honestly, I considered them for, just to name them as one of my favorite stacks of the week with Toney and Daniel Jones, just from a salary saving standpoint, because, you can't really talk about quarterback without talking about like the whole landscape, because we have someone in Josh Allen at 9,000 all the way down to Jordan Love at 6,000 who's in play. So you really got to like think about quarterback a little bit extra this week. Jones at 7,300 does enough for me to sort of pique my interest. We have a pretty clear, I would say, stack candidate with Kadarius Toney if the hand's okay. But I do kind of feel like I'm overlooking Booker for this week. It feels a little bit like the salary's good, the role has been good. And if he's kind of a full go, this game doesn't jump off the page at all to me, but it's still a solid workload for a reasonable salary.
Yeah, he's $6,300. He, in the games without Saquon, 87 yards per game. He had a good game on Monday against the Chiefs, which means the Chiefs, but like you can do some stuff on the ground against the Raiders as well. So I think that
game.
Oh, shoot. I totally blanked out the fact that he played for them, mostly because it was not memorable in any way. Although John Gruden loved him. So, whatever. There's that. I would agree that he's actually pretty in play. We've got guys down there like Damian Harris, $300 more. I prefer Harris. I know that. But like we've got Gaskins there. Zach Moss is there. Probably should prefer Booker over those guys like Gaskin and Moss, right? Or what do you think?
I like Gaskin a lot this week due to the offensive expectations. They've got a pretty solid implied team total. The Giants are they're at 21.5, but the Raiders have been like a very susceptible defense to running backs, both on the ground and out of the backfield in terms of adjusted efficiency allowed. So
yeah,
like I just kind of have overlooked Booker all week, but I do think that he's in play. I would probably still rank Gaskin first, but then Booker and Moss, even though we like Moss getting more passing work, but I could see Gaskin and Booker having a path to 20 points just from overall involvement with a touchdown. Moss doesn't really have a whole lot of yardage upside, and also like I don't expect him to be that involved in the red zone. So I would rank them Gaskin, Booker as like a 1A, 1B, and then 3 would be Moss.
You want to do a Gaskin versus Booker bet?
No, I just said they're like the 1A, 1B.
I know, but like, you prefer Gaskin. I prefer Booker. I think they're both in the same tier too, but I prefer Booker.
This makes me feel like I should like Devontae Booker because Jim historically dominates me in head-to-head bets on the
I did beat you in the Wayne Gallman versus Todd Gurley one, which is also a Giants backup running back.
I'll take it for the fun of the show, but I do think
Okay.
it's close.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
yeah, I don't know what happened, but I wasn't really taking a long look at Booker.
I think it was because we assumed Saquon would be back this week.
That probably was in the back of my mind. Yeah.
So, and like there was a lot of questions yesterday of whether or not he actually tested negative. He didn't. There was weird timing of tweets and stuff like that threw people off. But I think Booker at 63 is a pretty decent play this week. So,
yeah,
I mean, for sure. Sounds like Odell Beckham is going to sit out this week and potentially going forward with the Browns. They get the Bengals this week. Jarvis Landry must practice Wednesday, but is expected to be good to go. Did read a story about how he and Baker are still good, despite the fact that Jarvis is Odell's best friend. So that was reassuring for me because I was worried about that.
Tough on Jarv.
Yeah, he's the poor middleman. Yeah, I do feel bad for him. Maybe we can feel less bad when he scores his third touchdown Sunday. What's your view of this Cleveland offense with no Beckham?
The offense, not great. Jarvis himself, pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good salary. In his 2 games with at least 55% of the team's snaps, he's got a 26% target share, 28% air yard share. That's 7.5 targets per game. That works for me.
And that doesn't count week 7 when he didn't play half the snaps and he had 8 targets in that one. So it could be even better if we lowered the threshold. But you weren't cherry picking. Good on you.
Yeah, I don't like to do that stuff. I like to just.
I'm proud of you. Proud of you.
So for me, this is a game I'll talk about more in the trend section. I think this game has potential to be very appealing now that the Packers Chiefs game got bumped down.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeking that top game stack. I feel like I know. Actually, I don't know. I don't know what your top game stack is at this point.
I think this game is stackable. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Definitely there. I don't know if I'll get to. I will not get to Baker. I probably won't get to Burrow either. I think you could justify Burrow, but I probably won't get there because the pace in this game is really bad. But like, I'm fully okay with Jarvis Chase stacks, Jarvis Mixon stacks. I think those are great. So I'm very in from that perspective. Coming out of the bye, both Sammy Watkins and Latavius Murray are both still sidelined for the Ravens. Latavius doesn't matter, like whatever, but Sammy does matter for Rashad Bateman. We'll talk about them. The bookmakers section, James Robinson missed practice Wednesday due to his heel issue. Sounds like he still has a decent shot to play, but hypothetically, if he does not, are you tempted at all by Carlos Hyde at $5,600?
No, I'm good.
Okay, let's move to the bookmaker section. No more discussion needed. And start things off here with the Chiefs and the Packers. With the news, Aaron Rodgers will sit. The spread is now 7.5 in favor of Kansas City. Shocker, it's not favoring Green Bay. The total is down to 48. I put an adjustment for Love into my numbers, and it still has this game is the highest scoring one of the slates. I actually readjusted down before I mentioned this. Let me just run this one more time here. Okay.
Crunch those. I heard you hit that crunch button.
Oh, I lied. It moved down to third. So it's
crunch
third
again.
Yeah, it's third in offensive efficiency across both teams. But hey, it's still up there. 3 is not bad. So I don't think it's totally out of play for stacks. It's kind of tough to tell whether or not we should include Packers players in these. So what's your view of this game with Jordan Love starting?
Doesn't it feel like completely wild that we get the Chiefs at home against a Packers team with no Aaron Rodgers and the spread's only 7.5?
No,
like, but
6.
But like,
oh yeah.
If it was like last year,
fallen, yeah,
like
15.
Yeah, I mean that would be the Bills are 14.5 point favorites over the Jags. So like,
actually, let me do this. You talk. I'll run it if I just go based on my priors.
Okay. So yeah, this is a tricky one to answer, but I'm kind of taking the long-term view of the Chiefs where I don't care what the spread is. I don't care what the situation is. They need to win games, and they're not going to win games by not putting up points, which they haven't quite always been doing. But Patrick Mahomes has still been really good. His opponent adjusted passing net expected points per dropback is effectively the same mark as Josh Allen's, and nobody's worried about Josh Allen. They've had a ton of untimely. Or you're worried about Josh Allen, probably
not publicly,
but like perception is that Josh Allen is unstoppable.
MVP.
Yeah. And like they've had really unfortunate turnovers in and near the red zone, and that is not what you always bank on. Like, yeah, they got to stop doing that, but like, so I'm good with Mahomes. I'm good with the Chiefs, but actually, now that I say that, I'm not that great with Travis Kelce because he looks slow, and that's like, I'm sure he's dealing with a lot of like injuries to look,
Yeah.
but he doesn't look like himself.
Yeah.
And we thought that, hey, teams are blanketing the Chiefs. They're not blitzing. It's going to be good for Travis Kelce. They just threw it to Tyreek Hill like 1,000 times. So
18. Yeah. Like,
yeah,
that's crazy.
so
I think that Hill is still a good option.
yeah, I'm good with the Chiefs, which is honestly just Mahomes and
But like, how high does
Tyreek right now.
Mahomes rate out for you? Because I think that like saying we're good with him is fine, but realistically, are you going to use him on Sunday?
Yeah.
Okay, I might not. Just because.
So we use about 4 or 5 quarterbacks at the most.
Mm-hmm.
He's very much in that consideration still.
I think he's maybe 5th.
I don't have them completely ranked out outside my top few.
Yeah, I think he's 5th for me. If I had to like ballpark it right now, I think he's probably 5th. So like that's still fine, and I might get there. The reason that I'm not as high is because I expect the Packers to be very ground heavy here. They are already, as I mentioned before, dead last in pace based on Brandon's numbers. They will likely be slower when they run the football a bunch, and they can run the football against this Chiefs team, which lends itself well towards an under. My concern on the Chiefs is not the spread, because I think that my numbers has as a 6-point game, even after adjusting for Love. So like they view a decently competitive game. It's more so about the pace that really turns me off with the Chiefs. I think the matchup is great for them because I worry about Mahomes against smart defensive coordinators. I haven't really seen that out of the Packers thus far. So I think that, we could get Hill loose. I think that Hill is still totally fine. It's more so Mahomes who can stink. I would also say Daryl Williams is in play once again for me. $6,700. He did lose some like high leverage work to Derek Gore last week, and Gore looked good. But in the 2-minute drills, it was still Daryl Williams. He got over 110 yards, or he got 110 yards exactly in that game. And that's my concern with him, is yardage upside. So the Gore thing prevents me from like feeling great about Williams, but I'll use him at 67. I think, again, he's below Damian Harris. He's below. Do I prefer Daryl or Devontae? I should probably prefer Daryl over no, because Devontae is not going to lose work to Derek Gore because he's not in the team. But like,
I just love when you say it that way. It's funny.
But there's no Derek Gore equivalent. Like their backup is Eli Penny, who's a fullback. So I think I prefer Booker over Williams. What about you between those two specifically?
I think it's about equal based on the discrepancy in offensive expectations.
Correct.
So I might as well just take some savings and go with Booker.
Yeah, I feel better about Booker's workload, but better about Williams' offense. And that's what makes it pretty level there. All right, any Packers for you? I don't really want the reason we use the backs is for the red zone trips, and like, are they going to get them? I agree with you on Love, where sure, he's low salaried, but like realistically, the ceiling for a quarterback whose team wants to hide him against a defense that has been fine against bad quarterbacks this year, in a situation where Devontae Adams, I don't think has been cleared yet. He probably will be by Sunday, but I'm pretty sure he's not been cleared yet. So like, it's not the best situation. I feel like I'm okay totally missing out if he blows up. I think even for cash games, I don't think I want to go to Jordan Love this week.
Yeah, so I mean, he's projected pretty well, a lot of places, including numberFire, and I can say that since 2018, there have been 15 quarterbacks projected for at least 15 FanDuel points on numberFire for a main slate with a salary of 6,500 or lower, and against bottom 10 adjusted pass defenses entering the week, which the Chiefs are. One of those 15 scored 20 points. They averaged about 12 points. So even if you're like kind of having decent projections for these guys, they are not locks to score. I was talking to Jim before the show, and like we've had quarterbacks like in the 64, 65 range with like the quote unquote potential to put up some points. And we don't play them. So I don't really see the reason to go super heavy at Jordan Love on a team that almost certainly will run the ball as much as they throw it, if not more, unless they get floored from the get-go. So I'm with you. It could be dumb, but I really don't see the path. Like, I mean, I'm not talking like talent level, but what are the expectations between Jordan Love and like what Justin Fields was whenever like we finally saw him start? Like they might just try to run the ball and let him throw the ball like 14, 15 times if they can.
And Justin Fields is more talented. So
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like,
I agree.
It's not to do with talent. It's like
question for you though. Mac Jones at 65 or Jordan Love at 6,000?
Like neither.
Well, yeah, but like,
but if
I would never consider Mac Jones, and I think I put Mac Jones above Jordan Love.
Yeah, like we've had Trevor Lawrence in like games where he's gonna have to. They're gonna be trailing. This is not a good week because Buffalo's a good defense, but
right.
like,
we didn't use Lawrence last week against the Seahawks.
Yeah, like are we clamoring to play Trevor Lawrence against the Chiefs in this spot? Like, probably not. Like,
I'd be more inclined than with Love, honestly. But yeah, you're
right.
You're
but
right.
like, it's not like lock him in 100% minimum salary quarterback. I would be much more inclined to play Taysom Hill at 7,000 if he's like good to go.
At some point, you need points. Value is value, but you need points. And I think his ceiling is 20.
Yeah, his path to, and it's like, yeah, you can say, okay, well, he got me 20 and that let me pay up for Tyreek and like Kamara who went off. And it's like, sure, but if your quarterback is getting you like 19 points, that's still generally not enough, especially on a week like this where we have a lot of good passers who have question marks, but it's not like Jordan Love has no question marks.
Correct. I think people are kind of overplaying like the running angle here because like he's athletic, his like speed score is good. He didn't run a lot in college though. So like I think we're kind of overplaying that aspect of it. So,
and are they going to like let him run the ball a ton? Like, are they going to keep the ball in his hands and let him run?
Yeah.
They're probably just going to hand it because they already have two running backs. So
they're very good. Yeah.
Like get a lot of work. So,
right.
I mean, again, and this could come back in my face and he scores 28 points because he's just running the ball and slinging it against a bad defense, but it doesn't set up that way. I watched the Packers with Aaron Rodgers because I track pace stuff. Not that I track it manually, but like they just want to go out there and snap the ball with like 2 seconds left on the play clock with Aaron. They're not
when you're 7.5 point dog against the Chiefs, you should snap it with half second, not a half a second.
Yeah. So again, I'm with you. I mean, it does lower me on the Chiefs, but I'm probably going to have 0 Jordan Love lineups. And you asked me about other Packers. Like, I don't think I can play Devontae Adams with a lot of confidence or like with any confidence, but I don't even know if I can play him really at all. Because for him to pay off at a 9,000 price tag, I'd honestly be a little bit concerned with Aaron Rodgers here because they're going to try to slow it down. So,
yeah, we'll see. But I agree with you. So let's move on to the Chargers versus the Eagles in Philadelphia. That is a 50-point total. Chargers favored by 2.5 right now. The Chargers offense has been struggling, but this is a good matchup. They faced Bill Belichick and they faced the Ravens, 2 very good schemes. Philadelphia, Philly blew up last week offensively. So what's your view of this one from a stacking perspective?
I think this might be the game of the week then. Like if I had to pick one,
it's very difficult to stack. I'll let you talk about it first, but then I'll go through my concerns after that.
Well, those are my concerns too. I think this is the game, but the stackability of it is a little bit more tricky than we would like. I'm still going to play Justin Herbert because the salary is good. They have kind of moved away from throwing the ball to Mike Williams a lot. I think he's got a sub 18% target share in 3 of his past 4, something like that. I was looking into him. Keenan Allen, I love Keenan Allen. I think we both love Keenan Allen, but he doesn't really have massive upside at this point. So that's kind of an issue. Now, I don't have that issue too much with just Justin Herbert because it doesn't matter who he throws the ball to if I'm not stacking him. Problem is you always want to stack your quarterbacks, even in like a cash game, I think. So that's a bit of a concern. But for the Eagles, it's just kind of Dallas Goddard, which I feel really good about because his workload's been really strong since they got rid of Zach Ertz, and I always need tight ends. So I think Herbert, Goddard, and like maybe Keenan Allen does make for a good cash game core in a game that should be pretty solid. And that obviously includes Austin Eckler, but
Yeah.
like there are stacking concerns. So what are your thoughts on this game overall?
I think that they like both these teams play defense that is not conducive to big DFS days because they are one of those teams that plays the way every team plays the Chiefs, where they're like, you're not going to be as deep. The A dot against the Eagles is the lowest in football. Like the average at the target allowed is the lowest in the league. The Chargers want to be that way. They're both encouraging you to run on them, and teams do that. We saw last week the Eagles will run. Finally they will run now that Miles Sanders is hurt. They'll run. I think that hurts Jalen Hurts from a projection perspective, from an upside perspective. I think that hurts the game if they're going to run a lot. So to me, I was going through my loves at quarterback yesterday, and I had Justin Herbert's name down, and like I had to erase it because I was just like, I think that the concern around the A dot is enough where I'm like, I'm having trouble getting there. So I think he's fine because the salary is low and he's a very, 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 very good quarterback facing a not great defense. But the style they play really hurts the overall appeal of Mike Williams, hurts the appeal of stuff in this game.
I thought you froze.
No, I was just staring.
You stopped so abruptly and you didn't move. I thought you froze and I was like, my internet's out. But no, I'm with you. Like, again, I think this is the game from a process standpoint, but even within that, it's like hard to stack it up a ton of ways.
Right. Like I think Eckler with Goddard, mini stack, cool. I'll do that happily. Totally fine with that. Like the tough part is it's such a logical spot to buy Mike Williams in terms of like getting in on him because like they just face two defenses that are scheming to take him away. And I don't have trust in the Eagles defensive coaching to do that. So like, I want to get there and I'm probably going to get there to be fully honest and just kind of disregard the concerns around ADOT just because like he's $7,300. I know he can torch any slate because he's so good. So I'm still going to get there, but that's the hang up I have in like going all out. Oh yeah, Mike Williams all the time. Like I'm going to have him, but like that's the hang up for me, preventing me from getting higher than I want to be, as high as I want to be, I should say.
Yeah. I can say pretty confidently that this is the only game that comes close to a 2 QB game.
Correct.
Which probably tells me a lot. I should probably just like chart those and just track how those games go where you feel good about both quarterbacks. But this is the only one. The one you could maybe make the case for is the Chiefs and Packers. But again,
correct.
I don't think we're playing Jordan Love for
all
the reasons.
That's more so based on salary than expectation, whereas these guys is based on expectation.
Yeah. So I think this probably just sums it up. It is like my favorite game to stack this week, but I don't even feel good about it.
Right. I think that so Herbert and Hurts are firmly in the second tier quarterback. I think Lamar Jackson is in tier by himself. And then you're looking at Dak, Herbert, Hurts, Mahomes, all in that second tier. And then that's why I said Mahomes is probably 5 for me. I think he's the bottom end of that second tier, but like it's rough. So let's talk about that guy all alone in tier 1 in Lamar Jackson and talk about that game against the Vikings. Total is 49.5. The Ravens are 6-point favorites up from 5.5 at open. So I think the big question here, because I know you like Lamar too, the big question is, do you have faith the Vikings keep this game close? And where does this game rank for you in terms of stacking?
Okay, it's multiple questions. I'm going to take it one at a time.
Okay.
I forgot the questions though.
Do you think the Vikings keep this game close?
Yeah. I mean, why not, right? This game is one of the better in my overall game scores that I look at. There are concerns with it, but I have it 4th, like good implied team totals for the most part. Am I missing something with why you're asking whether Minnesota keeps pace?
Well, the spread widened. That was why. Also, my numbers like the Vikings more than they should. I need like a sanity check to make sure I'm not like totally off on them. as we've
Yeah,
discussed offline, that I think they're too high on them.
Well, I mean, like numberFire's metrics have been high on Minnesota all season. They have lost. They should have a better win-loss record than they do. But I wouldn't like this game so much if we had other games to pick from.
Right.
If we had the Chiefs and Packers at full go, this game would probably just get bumped out. But downgrading that game so much, this is a top 4 game this week.
So if I told you before that I reran my numbers I readjusted for love with the Packers, and reran aggregate offensive efficiency. This is number 1 now. This is the number 1 game on the slate in terms of aggregate offensive efficiency. And it also has, I think it's the tightest spread based on my numbers. No, sorry. New England, Carolina's 1, and then Vegas versus New York, and then Minnesota, Baltimore, it's 3. So I like the Vikings to cover based on my numbers. I prefer to bet their team total versus betting them to cover, but I think that lends itself to. Sorry. We're good. Am I? I don't know. Anyway, I think it's a close game. I think it's a high-scoring game. I like Lamar a lot, and there are very logical options in the Vikings as far as stacking. So to me, it's a very good game. I think it's my favorite game to stack on this slate. Maybe that's overly ambitious, but kind of okay with that, honestly.
I don't think it's wrong to say this is your favorite game to stack. Again, I think process-wise, the best game to target is the Chargers and the Eagles, but there are concerns with how just guys are getting used, and I've been playing Devontae Smith all season, and this will probably be the week where he actually pans out, but it's not a good Devontae Smith week from a process standpoint. I still think that there's one of the things I was going to ask you, and part of why I got tripped up with all your questions is because I was going to ask you, I don't think you named Josh Allen whenever you were talking about the second tier quarterbacks.
Oh, I should have. Sorry.
I just wanted to make sure.
No, that was an oversight.
Okay.
He's in there. Sorry. That was an oversight on my part.
Because if I do have at least one Jaguar I can bring it back with, that might be enough for me to rate Buffalo and Jacksonville high.
Yeah.
From a game stack standpoint. It's that might by default end up being my number 1.
Okay.
I have a lot of Dan Arnold if I do that then, but this is clearly one of the best games. I think it's a 5-game week with the Chargers, Eagles, Bills, Jaguars, Cowboys, Broncos, this game, and Houston, Miami.
So who is your preferred Vikings bring back? Because in theory, to me, it should be Dalvin Cook. The problem is the Ravens have been really good versus running backs this year in terms of limiting upside. So I think it's still Dalvin Cook, but I am very open to, going with Jefferson, Thielen over him because of the matchup. Where are you at the Vikings skill guys?
Yeah, so probably Jefferson. From a salary standpoint, that helps a lot. I don't care. I don't see myself playing Adam Thielen. I did want to ask you about his yardage upside being a little bit better. He's got 126 and 78 in his past 2. He also has a 92-yard game in the opener. Other than that, 50 or below in 4 games, which is not fair to nitpick and say he doesn't have yardage upside,
right?
Because he's got, but we've historically been low on Thielen because he just gets red zone targets and doesn't get a whole lot of yardage. Do you view him any differently?
Yeah. So he is up to a 32% deep target share right now, partly because they haven't been throwing as deep as much this year as they have in the past. But he's had the past 4 games, 3, 2, 3, and 1 deep targets. That's pretty good. So I prefer Jefferson, but I'm very okay having a healthy amount of Thielen too. I think it's more even than usual because I'm not a Thielen person either, but I think what you alluded to with the yardage upside is kind of what's sticking out to me, where I can pretty easily see him getting 85. The benchmark in a wide receiver is 85 yards or 2 touchdowns, and he can get either. So I think that's why I'm more receptive to it. So I think, honestly, I might just split it 3 ways and make it 33% Dalvin, 33% Jefferson, 33% Thielen, and let it sort itself out, honestly.
Boy, if we got to do that though, that's tough. That's a tough ask because then we have Lamar, we have Marquise Brown, we have Rashad Bateman, and we have Mark Andrews. So even if you're heavy on this game and you want to stack it with 3 different pass catchers with Lamar and 3 different players from the other side, like if you're playing, let's say 30, 40, 50 lineups, like you got to probably play like Lamar in every lineup then because you're going to very easily miss out on the
I've
right
heard
combination of
worse
this
ideas.
game plus then the guys outside this game that you're trying to hit on. So
Right.
I could probably see myself locking in Lamar. He's like the one quarterback I think that we don't have big question marks with.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the saving graces, I don't know, that's a weird phrase to use there. One of the positives here is I feel a good amount of conviction towards Marquise Brown and would be okay leaning pretty heavily on him. I'm okay with Andrews, obviously. I'm okay with Bateman,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that this is a very much good spot for Marquise Brown. The Vikings are letting up a lot of deep throws. Marquise Brown, I think, had 8 deep targets before their bye. So partly because of negative script, but like he's been awesome this year, and I expect that to continue. So I'm okay having a strong lean towards him. I'll use Bateman a lot as a one-off, and I like Andrews, but I'm okay leaning pretty heavily towards Marquise Brown this week. Any final thoughts for you on this game or game stacking in general?
This will probably by default be the game I'm heaviest on at this point.
Load it up, baby. Let's go. Let's move now to our trends discussion for week number 9. Starting off with the Dolphins here, because we got a bit of a sample now on the Dolphins with Tua Tagovailoa and Devontae Parker. Parker has now played 2 games with Tua. They're facing the Texans. What more could you ask for? Tua revenge game because the Texans said they don't want him. Let's go, baby. What you got here?
Yeah, I mean, this game honestly isn't too bad compared to the rest of the main slate. 6.5 point spread in favor of the Dolphins. Terrible total. That at least puts the Dolphins offense in consideration with an above average implied team total. So I wanted to dig back into their offense with Tua and Devontae Parker sharing the field. We've got those 2 games that Jim mentioned, weeks 1 and 8. With Parker playing, with both these guys playing at least 80% of the snaps. Tua has a passing net expected points per dropback mark of just 0.03, but he did play the NFL's best adjusted pass defense in that sample. Also, another top 20 unit, and the Texans are 27th. Adjusted for opponent, Tua did overperform in that 2-game sample. Just an average of 204 yards and half a passing touchdown, which is not really what you're looking for. But again, one of those was an extremely tough matchup. So there are concerns, but I'm not really looking to justify playing Tua. I'm looking for justification for the running backs, receivers, and possibly tight end. As for the target market shares in these relevant games, Jalen Waddle and Devontae Parker each average 9 targets per game, which is 28% of the team's looks. Basically the same air yard shares, 32, 34% respectively. Waddle does have a better weighted target share, or at least weighted target total. 11.7 versus 10.1. And the way that I get those is just giving you the extra value on a downfield target and a red zone target because those are more valuable targets in terms of expected fantasy points. But still, both are very viable. They have low to mid range salaries in the low 6,000 range. I need value at receiver. Usually I consider value at receiver in the 5,000 range, but I will take these workloads at those salaries with this talent level as well. I'm also open to the value at running back with Myles Gaskin at 6,100. He's actually 3rd on the team in these 2 games with a 14% target share. Mike Gesicki's at 9%. I don't think that would stick, but I think he's a little bit over salaried. Gaskin, though, played 60% of the team snaps last week with 20 adjusted opportunities. Savon Ahmed did play 25% of the snaps. Could steal some red zone work, but kind of in on at least 3 of these pieces, mostly the 2 receivers, but also Gaskin, just because I like the workload. 65% snap rate in a very promising situation with a pretty good red zone role overall, the ability to catch passes. So I like the Dolphins. Where are you landing on this team and this game? Is there anything on the other side you could bring it back with?
So I like Parker and I like Waddle. I'd change headphones because mine broke.
It threw me off. Yeah.
While we were talking. Yeah, sorry. Like they like snapped and I could still hear, but I knew it was gonna go away. So I think we're gonna go with the bug ones for the rest of today. Anyway, I like Parker a lot. I'm okay with Waddle. I prefer Parker over Waddle personally. Not into Gesicki.
Bet.
What?
Bet me.
Okay, cool. Parker versus Waddle?
Yeah, I have Waddle.
Okay, cool. It's fine. I'll take that. Not into Gesicki due to the salary. Like, I just don't think the workload's good enough to justify $6,500 when we've got Darren Waller at 68, Mark Andrews at 71. We've got Goddard at 62. I think I'd rather go there than those guys. So that's where I'm at with him. As far as Gaskin, like, I just kind of hate the yardage upside. He's not going over 100 yet this year. And the 2 games with Malcolm Brown being banged up, he's at 77 and 55. He had 0-7 red zone chances last week. Like, he's probably going to get you like 20 to 25 adjusted opportunities, but like, I'm not sure what the juice is like in those. It's kind of like a old school Devin Singletary role where I'm not sure if he can get me 25. So I don't know. I think I'm okay with him, but I prefer, honestly, I might prefer Zach Moss over him too. I prefer Devontae Booker over him, as we discussed in our bets, and Damian Harris, et cetera, et cetera. I just have a hard time with him. And I agree with you. I'm not trying to get to Tua, but I think that like I see enough here where I can feel good about Parker, feel good about Waddle, and primarily those two.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's mostly those 2 receivers. I don't think we'll be alone in that, but I think there's still enough for Gaskin at the low salary with the good offensive expectations overall. He's not going to be like an absolute core play for me, but I mean, it seems like kind of locked into 60% of the snaps, and like you said, 20 to 25 adjusted opportunities with an offense that should score. That's the one thing that keeps drawing me back in is their 5th in implied team total on this slate.
Interesting. It's pretty high.
With like a solid but not like crazy spread. It's 6.5 points. So like they should be playing from ahead, playing efficiently,
but not
pulling starters and like not trying.
Definitely not. I don't think this Dolphins team is capable of that, so I'd agree with you there. Let's move now to the second trend and talk about the Denver Broncos defense and their pace, because I like the Cowboys a lot this week. They're one of the offenses we can actually feel good about, I would say. It's not a perfect spot, but it's one I feel good in targeting. The biggest blemish here is Denver's pace. They rank 30th in pace by your numbers, so it is a pace down spot for Dallas, but Dallas fast enough by themselves where this game still ranks 6th in the main slate by your numbers in total pace, which is very good. So it's not a slog, and I think that's encouraging. I also think we can target Denver's defense with opposing players. They rank 16th overall, 13th against the pass, and 24th against the rush by numberFire's metrics. And that rushing number is very interesting. Both Najee Harris and Dearness Johnson shredded them on the ground. Jared Patterson was pretty efficient last week as well. We know the Cowboys will run when the situation dictates they should, and I feel like this matchup may do that. That ups my interest in Zeke Elliott. He's $8,200 for the full season. He's at 99.9 yards per game. He's at 112 plus in 4 separate games, which means the upside here is really nice. And the red zone share for Zeke is respectable at 37%. I would be most tempted by him over the pass catchers here because Michael Gallup may be back this week. The Cowboys, 9.5-point favorites. My numbers use this as being a more than 10-point game. Denver better against the pass and the rush. So I'm not writing off CeeDee Lamb, Mari Cooper, Michael Gallup, but I do think that Zeke is the best route for exposure to this team. And I will use Dak stacked with Zeke decently often. So what's your view of the Cowboys in this spot at home against Denver?
I still think they're one of the better offenses to target, which is not like a bold statement because their implied team total is second best behind only the Bills. This is a pretty heavy spread, but not something that we have to get away from entirely, especially if Denver does play slowly. It would take a longer amount of game time for this game to get out of hand. I also believe enough in the Denver offense that maybe I shouldn't.
I mean, they're not the worst.
To get like completely blown out from the start. The bigger question mark is like without Von Miller, if they do just kind of get shredded even more, you make good points with the rushing success rates and stuff allowed to running backs from Denver's side. So this is honestly, like, you asked me if I could name 3 offenses I feel good about. This is one of the offenses I do feel good about,
I
even
think
with the question
Baltimore and
marks.
Dallas are the 2 that I feel are firm yeses.
I think so too. I would also probably put the Bills there because, like,
True.
I don't really. Their pass rate's not as high as I thought it was. Whenever they're like up by at least 8, it's about league average. What's about?
Part of it's because
They
that
still
sample includes when they're up by 40.
Yeah, I mean, I could narrow it down, but
Right.
they're still like what the NFL average is overall. So like they're still throwing the ball at an average rate. So I would say those 3, but specifically Baltimore and then Dallas, I think, are just the 2 teams that I feel best with.
Will you use Dak?
Yeah.
Where are you at on Zeke?
Love him.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I was on base with those 2
No,
guys.
Jim, I love him.
Is he in your loves?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you do. Okay. Well, Dak's in my loves. So we'll talk more about them later on. So let's move to your second trend here and talk about that Browns-Bengals game. Pace here is gross, but there are a lot of other things that are good. High total, tight spread, justifiably tight spread, I would say as well. What are you seeing here with the Bengals offense and the road they've faced thus far?
Yeah, so this is one of those games where it doesn't jump off the page, and I think it's really easy to overlook and kind of write off. But from a process standpoint, it's like solid enough total, tight spread that can lead to shootouts. Not saying it will, but I just wanted to dig in because it's one of these, like, I can't really call it a second tier game because I don't even know if there's a top tier of games, but it's like second and a half tier. But Joe Burrow and the Bengals are in a game with that tight spread. So I wanted to look a little bit closer because this will dictate whether we feel good about Burrow, sure, but more specifically Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins. So I did look into this spot, and I have some concerns, but I also don't care. So the Browns have their own issues, but we have Jarvis Landry that we can bring it back with. So like there's enough that if what I say is not going to get us away from the Bengals, that like I can stack this game plenty. Pro Football Focus rates the Bengals pass blocking 22nd overall, but the Browns pass rush 4th. Next Gen Stats has the Browns second in pressure rate generated. So I know that we can overlook the fact that the Bengals don't have a great offensive line because Jamar Chase has been awesome and say that they didn't need to upgrade their offensive line, but they could face a lot of pressure this week. And Joe Burrow has yet to face a top 10 team by pressure rate and has faced just 2 inside the top 20 by pressure rate. So he's played a lot of teams that don't really get a lot of pressure. Against pressure specifically, whenever he's pressured on his dropbacks, he's a tick below the NFL average in EPA per dropback, according to Next Gen Stats, which is not ideal by any means, but it's also not drastically worse than expectation there. But in the 2 games against at least top 20 teams, I think they're 12th and 13th off the top of my head. He threw for an average of 349 yards and 2.5 touchdowns against the Packers and Ravens. Again, though, this is a massive step up, like an outlier in pressure rates. So this could also implode. And what part of the reason I wanted to bring this up is because you know a lot more about offensive line and defensive line numbers and ability than I do. But if we can overlook that concern and say that he's going to be able to get the ball out, he's going to stay upright well enough. We have like 4 assets, maybe 5 if we include CJ Uzama, which I don't think we will, but that's relevant. And in 6 games with T. Higgins does lead the team with target share with 26%, 32% air yard share. Jamar Chase is at 24% and a 40% air yard share. The expected FanDuel points are about the same in my model. The actual FanDuel points very, very different, of course, but it's easy to talk yourself into Jamar Chase, easy to talk yourself into T. Higgins if you believe that the target share is willing to stick. And then Joe Mixon, he's kind of back 76% of the snaps last week, 14 carries, 5 targets. So should I be worried about the fact that the Browns can get a lot of pressure here?
Yeah, for Burrow, because like quarterbacks are so dependent on efficiency and sacks kill efficiency. They kill touchdown drives. So I think for Burrow, it matters. I don't think it matters for Chase, Mixon, maybe Higgins. I think that because they get volume and we can expect them to be like the actual like yards per attempt number for Burrow, I would expect to be decently high because he's playing well. The Browns have good pieces, obviously, in their secondary, but like not one I necessarily need to like avoid. So I would say like a Jarvis Mixon mini stack, I love. Very okay with that. Jarvis Chase, very okay with that as well. I think that that's my primary access to this game, but the pass rush is enough where I am, and the pass rush and the pace are enough where I'm okay not getting to Burrow for this week. What about for you? Are you going to use Burrow or no?
I don't think I can get to Burrow. I think we have a lot of quarterbacks again with question marks, sure, but with paths to massive ceilings. Burrow can get there because we've seen him do it, and if he can just kind of stay upright and throw the ball to Jamar Chase, who will then catch it, and defenders will fall over, and he will run 80 yards for a touchdown because regression is irrelevant here.
Correct. It's fake.
But like, I think there's enough with this game where if maybe there were one or two more quarterback question marks, or if I find out that weather is going to be bad for some quarterbacks or something, that Burrow's close enough that I would still consider him.
Not off the map. Yeah, I think that's fair. But probably
he's
not
on the wait
high.
list.
Yeah, wait list. That's a good way to put it. I like that. I'd agree. Waitlisting Joe Burrow, not there yet, but on standby in case we need him later on. Let's talk here about the Saints with no Jameis because we know that part. We just don't know who will be the quarterback. We also know they'll face the Falcons, so good defense in terms of matchup. Hard to cross them off. We do have at least some idea of what they do if Taysom Hill were to start. So let's talk about that here because Hill started 4 games last year. One of those was the Kendall Hinton game, which was pretty wild. So we'll chop that one off. But in the other 3 games, the Saints early down first half pass rate is 50%. So far this year, they're at 49.2%. They were actually more pass heavy under Taysom last year than they are with Jameis this year. So kind of the same offense. Taysom was at 0.11 passing net expected points per dropback last year, whereas Jameis was at 0.16. So again, pretty similar. So if Hill starts, we should expect the run-heavy offense to keep up with similar efficiency levels. If it's Simeon, it'd likely be the same run-heavy but with less efficiency. The tough part here is that it's hard to determine how we view Alvin Kamara because in those 3 games, he averages 79 yards per game. He's at 106 so far this year. He also had just 28% of the team's red zone chances because Hill stole a lot of goal line work there, and he's at 43% in the red zone this year. So I do think it's a legitimate downgrade to Kamara to not have Jameis out there. And he did lose snaps to Mark Ingram last week, lost a couple routes last week. Only 10% of Simeon's pass attempts went to Kamara last week. So I don't know if it pushes Kamara off the map completely because in Taysom's final start last year, they acknowledged that like they had to get the ball to Kamara. He had 11 carries and 10 targets, but that was still just 94 yards. So I'm having a tough time getting to Kamara at $9,400. As far as Hill, if he starts, the floor should be good thanks to the rushing. I just question the ceiling because he had 24.2, 18.5, 23.6, and 19.9 FanDuel points in his 4 starts last year. And he had Michael Thomas in those games. The environment is worse now. I can get his rushing output plus better passing in other spots, like via Jalen Hurts, more so than Taysom Hill. So, like, I get to do that instead. So, I'm probably going to be low on this offense in this entire game. Am I too low, Brandon? Or how are you viewing the Saints here?
I don't think you're too low, especially because, like, we need like games to be competitive for like big games, and the Falcons, like, first of all, this game has a total of 41.5. Like, the Falcons are without Calvin Ridley. I talked about Matt Ryan playing better and playing above opponent expectation entering last week,
and he immediately lost his best receiver. Look what you did.
Yes. Now he did that against weak pass defenses, which I talked about, and even with that, he was overperforming. Played a better pass defense last week without Ridley and was bad. So, like, are they going to have to do a lot? Are they going to have to do enough for Taysom Hill to like throw the ball? And if he doesn't throw the ball a ton, his path to a big game is very, very small. The reason that like the stud quarterbacks like a Lamar Jackson now, or Kyler Murray is probably the best example. The reason that these guys are worth their lofty salaries almost every week is because they throw the ball about as much as like a traditional quarterback, and then they run the ball for like 40 yards with touchdown upside. It's different if you really only run the ball, and they might not have to throw the ball a ton. So
Right.
like I keep saying the ball a lot, but what are the odds that this game goes, I don't want to say over, but like goes over 50 points? It seems extremely low. So I'm kind of low on Kamara myself. I think he's going to be a good snake draft pick for this week, but like 9,400 is asking a lot for a back who very easily could have a worse red zone role and just few red zone trips this week.
So straight up, not considering salary, Alvin Kamara or Austin Eckler?
I knew that was coming. I would probably say Eckler.
I agree. Kamara or Dalvin Cook in a tough matchup?
Probably Kamara.
I think it's close though, right?
It's close.
Right. I think I lean Kamara there too, but it's very close.
Yeah.
Might talk myself into Dalv by the time we get to Sunday, but it's very close. I think those are the primary ones there. And
what about
Dalv is $600 lower?
Yeah. What about this? And this is 900 now. Aaron Jones. Like we kind of glossed over Aaron Jones when we talked about the Packers.
Kamara.
Okay.
Kamara. Because the threats to his workload are lesser than the threats to Aaron Jones' workload. They both have threats, but I think that Kamara's are lesser. I also I have higher expectations for the offense. So,
I mean, bookmakers don't. Or sorry, they do. I was looking at the Falcons though. My bad.
Yeah. So I think that's where I'm at. What about you?
Kamara, even at salary, but I feel like Aaron Jones might get a lot of. It's hard to tell because people might think that he'll just get as much work as he can handle.
I've seen that sentiment on Twitter already, so I think that'll happen. I would not be shocked if AJ Dillon catches popularity too.
Yeah, I'm going to be low on Aaron Jones, which is scary in this rushing matchup, but with the expectations overall, I can't hate myself too much for it.
Yeah, I agree. So let's move now to the weather. 2 games to flag in terms of wind, but nothing too outrageous right now. Miami versus Houston. Winds are at 15 miles per hour. That's right at the threshold. I wouldn't worry too much yet, but just check back on Sunday.
Too much?
What's that?
You wouldn't worry too much?
Get out of here. Who invited you on the show? Winds in Kansas City for the Chiefs Packers are at 13 miles per hour. Again, nothing to be too worried about right now, but just check back on that later. So let's move into our position by position plays for week number 9 for the FanDuel main slate. Brandon, starting off at quarterback, who stands out to you there?
The one quarterback I feel best about, and I feel like is a lock for our head-to-head this week, is Lamar Jackson. It's a great salary and a great overall game. My Sims currently have him at 53% likely to get to 25 FanDuel points. Just 3 quarterbacks overall are at above 35%. That's Josh Allen, Lamar, and Mahomes. Only 10 are above 20%. I know that we have lower salaried options, but there are plenty of quarterbacks who can put up 30, and I don't really think it's coming from Jordan Love this week, so I don't want to miss out. And so I'm going to go with Lamar. It's he's faced just one top 12 pass defense. Minnesota's pretty solid there for sure, but I'm good with Lamar. I think he has the fewest question marks of the week, and also has the easiest stack candidates, which is kind of wild to think about at this point.
Yeah.
And then my second love is, I think for both of us, our second loves would be a little bit conditional. I'm going to go Justin Herbert at 76. I love this salary. I like this game a lot. He's faced one pass defense inside the top 20 this year, according to numberFire's metrics. Philly's 17th. If you remove that game against the top 10 pass defense, he's averaged 278 yards, 2.5 touchdowns, over 22 FanDuel points per game. He is 4th and 90th percentile value in my sims. So again, everyone has question marks aside from probably Lamar. So I might as well take some savings on Justin Herbert.
And again, I was on Herbert initially, just got scared off by the 8 out allowed, but I think he's firm in that second tier for me as well. My one is Lamar. I think that can kind of go without saying. Lamar Jackson, my first love this week, $8,300. He has 50 plus rushing yards about one game this year and 25 plus pass attempts in every game, which is a deviation. They're throwing a lot, which is great. So love Lamar. He will be my default quarterback this week, followed by Dak, I think. I'm willing to stack him with Zeke here to make things a bit easier. Dallas ranks second on the main slate in projected offensive efficiency for me, behind just Buffalo. But Dak is an $1,100 discount from Josh Allen. This game is indoors. The spread is closer. Dak has had 27 plus points in 3 out of 6 games this year. I'm expecting to be pretty much a full go this week. So I like Dak a lot and would like to be heavy on Dak. Again, primary stacking candidate is Zeke, which feels weird, but I think that's appropriate for this week. Let's move to running back. Speak of the devil, Brandon, who you got as your love at running back?
I'm going to go with Zeke to start it off. 29.5 point implied team total, second only to the Bills this week. Denver just traded Von Miller. They haven't even been good against, their defense has been just so against the rush. So you would think that they'll be able to play from ahead, but probably not dominate. I do feel at least decent enough about Denver's offense and the pace situation where they can probably just feed Zeke. Also, Dak's not 100%. I mean, he might be, but you would think he's not fully 100% just coming off that injury. He's played 72% of snaps this year with 24.3 adjusted opportunities per game. My second love is going to be Joe Mixon at 7,400, just because there's not a whole lot to feel great about at running back. So I'm going to go with Mixon at a good salary. The Browns are not the best rushing matchup by any means, but can really only do so much when the slate is so weird at running back. I will need value, and we're kind of assuming that we're not going to play a whole lot of McCaffrey, but if we get reports that he's going to play and be 100%, then we're going to need some value. So any savings I can get at running back is good. Mixon played 76% of snaps last week, 14 carries, 5 targets, tight spread, highish total, not the worst game, good red zone role for him. My third love probably should be Devontae Booker, but I still don't know if Saquon's going to play. Probably sounds like he's not going to play, but I'm going to go with Myles Gaskin here. I keep wavering on him. I like this offense a lot. I talked about that in detail. Good implied team total of 26 points. They should play from ahead. And Gaskin, for his workload concerns, he's one of 9 main slate running backs to average at least 20 adjusted opportunities with a 30% overall red zone opportunity share over the past 4 weeks. But his salary is way down with the part-time players, which he still kind of is with like a 60% snap rate. But, he has a receiving role. He has a red zone role. I like the offense this week. So I don't want to be completely off of Myles Gaskin just for some concerns.
Yeah, I don't want to say completely off either, but like a little bit lower or higher on some other guys here. Let's talk about my number one love, which is Austin Eckler. I think that I prefer Zeke, but I haven't talked about Eckler yet, so let's talk about him here. He has a good combo of role, matchup, game environments. He's had 100 plus yards in 5 out of 7 games this year. He's had 120 or more twice. Eckler has had half of the red zone chances in 3 straight games. He is in a good spot here against the Eagles. They are booty against the rush. They rank 25th there. I am tempted by Dalvin Cook as a pivot, but the matchup heavily favors Eckler, and I'm okay taking the path of lesser resistance and going with Eckler here. But again, I prefer Zeke relative to salary. My love number 2 is the same as yours, Joe Mixon. Chris Evans has practiced again on Wednesday. When he was out last week, Mixon had 5 targets, and he had 6 2 games before that. And Mixon with passing game work is a really, really good fantasy back. He's gotten that twice recently. He's had 150 plus yards from scrimmage twice this year. That's awesome too. That's 15 points with no touchdowns and no receptions. I mean, some of that was receiving either way, but like non-touchdown points is pretty good. He's $7,400, tight, high total game. Love all that from Mixon. My love number 3 is Damian Harris. They are 3.5 point favorites over Carolina. Carolina ranks 23rd against the rush. If we look at the full games Harris has played with no James White, he's at 100 yards per game. He has a 45% red zone share. I have been very low on Harris traditionally. I am less low on him this week because his salary is forgiving and they're favored. I don't know. I think that's what gets me there. I haven't heard you talk about Harris yet. What are your thoughts on him quickly?
Fine.
Okay.
Wouldn't put him as a love. Still think that his best case outcome is like 22 FanDuel points, which sounds like you would always take at that salary, but that's his best case outcome, I think. And he's not
He
always
had
going to have his
24
best.
2 weeks ago. But anyway. I'm saying this is someone who agrees with you in general. I just think, whatever. Let's move to wide receiver. What you got there?
Tyreek Hill. I know there are pace concerns on the other side, but I don't want to be stupid about this. And I don't feel great about a lot of running backs, so I might as well take some savings, such as Damian Harris, who has a 24-point ceiling. So I'll use some Harris. I want to make that clear, but don't really plan on prioritizing him. Hill, though, 18 targets. You can't really nitpick anything there. And even with the team is blanketing downfield, he had 3 downfield targets, 3 red zone targets, 2 end zone targets. Green Bay, they're going to try to limit the downfield work, but they're still bottom 10 in passing success rate allowed on short targets and just league average against the deep ball. So I don't want to overthink this one too much. And then most realistically, I will be looking in the value range for receivers so I can get up to the quarterbacks and running backs overall. So I'm going to go with pretty heavy exposure to Jalen Waddle at 6,100. I talked about preferring him to Parker, but I like both. Waddle just has the better kind of adjusted workload with the 11.7 weighted targets per game in this sample. 2 downfield, 2 red zone targets in that 2 games. So I would lean Waddle, but I like both. And then in the value range, I'm going to be pretty heavy, I think, too, on Rashad Bateman at 5,400. It's a really, really low salary. That's going to open up a ton. 64% of the snaps, 64% of the routes in his 2 games. Just had a bye week to get more acclimated to the offense. If Sammy Watkins doesn't play, that only helps. And he had a lot of bunny targets in the opener, but the ADOT overall in his 2-game sample is 9.9 yards downfield, 1.5 downfield targets per game. Minnesota is top 5 against running backs and tight ends in adjusted FanDuel points per target, but 18th against receivers. So probably the best routes to success is through the receivers this week.
I agree with you, and that I'll be heavy on Bateman. Very much think that he's a great play for this week and will be there. I also want to get to Marquis Brown, who's my favorite love for this week. The Vikings do allow the 5th highest ADOT among all teams to opposing wide receivers. Brown has 25% of the Ravens' overall targets this year, 47% deep, and 23% in the red zone. His target share in 2 games with Rashad Bateman and no Sammy Watkins is 28%. So $7,700 seems very fair for him. He will be my preferred stacking partner with Lamar, probably 60% Marquise Brown, 20% each of Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman. But Bateman, really good one-off play, standalone play to save some salary. My love, too, is going head-to-head with your, we actually both covered a lot of the same teams here. I have Devontae Parker as my second love because I like the combination of volume and production. He has 80 yards in both games with Tua. He has 28% of the targets in those, as you alluded to before. Hasn't had the same high leverage work as Waddle, which is why the weighted numbers prefer Waddle. So I do like both, and I think that that's worth shouting out. But I think the production does count here, so I'll go with Devontae over Waddle, but I think both are very good, and I will have both for sure. My third love is Jarvis Landry. He had 10 targets last week in his first game back with Baker. He has 26% of the targets in 2 games with Baker this year. He also had 3 deep targets last week. The rest of the team had 2, which means that he should have yardage upside. He's $5,900. It's not the worst game. So I think that Mixon Landry game stacks to me really enticing in a place I want to go for sure this week. Let's move to tight end. What you got there?
We might have like a 1v1 in our head-to-head this week, it feels like. I'm going to go with Dallas Goddard, 6,200. Love him. I loved him last week. I'm pretty sure he was my love, but 80% snap rate, 85% route rate, 26% target share, 30% air yard share in 2 games now without Zach Ertz. 4-1 downfield targets in those games with Philly barely throwing last week. They're probably not going to be able to just like run the ball this week against the Chargers, who are top 5 against receivers and running backs, but 31st in adjusted FanDuel points per target allowed to tight ends, which adjusts on a player level basis, not just a team level basis. And my second love is Dan Arnold at 5,100. Since week 5, so if you exclude his debut with 31% of the snaps with the Jaguars, He has a 69% route rate, which is very, very nice. Which is top 14 mark at the position in that span. And he's also 5th in targets per game in that sample, trailing some bigger names. Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, Kyle Pitts. They're going to have to throw this week. Helps balance out whenever I do play Josh Allen, who I think we kind of glossed over, but I love Josh Allen this week, obviously. And Buffalo's tougher on receivers than they are against tight ends.
Yeah. Just have a hard time getting there. I don't know. It's like a mental block of using a team that's 14.5 point dog. But like you're right, the usage is fine. So it makes sense. He's probably the best guy down there. Maybe Tyler Conklin I might like more just because I have higher expectations of the offense, but like from a workload perspective, Arnold is the clear pick down there for sure. My first love at tight end is the same as yours. Shocker. Dallas Goddard has a 26% target share in 2 games with no Zach Ertz. He's averaging 3 deep targets per game in those. He'd never had 3 deep targets in a game. Now he's averaging 3 deep targets per game the past 2. The Chargers are a team that want to funnel things underneath. That should help for Goddard. He has 70 plus yards in both games, which means he has yardage upside at tight end without breaking the bank. Love that. Did consider Darren Waller for that slot, I will say. $6,800. Should have a pretty good target share this week. Not the worst matchup. That game is not bad from a pace perspective either. So Devontae Booker, Darren Waller game stacks also viable to me. Are you groaning because I did push back on that earlier or something or what?
No, I just they forgot Darren Waller existed.
I will not because I don't want to get burned again. I am frightened. My second love is George Kittle because it's not a bad game. Kittle has had 4 weeks to rest up. Kyle Shanahan said last week he was sure he'd return when he was eligible to be activated. He is now. He is $6,000. Kittle had 19 targets in the final 2 games before his injury. He had a 23% target share. He's $6,000. I think that Kittle is a guy I want to be high on for sure this week. So Kittle and Goddard with a little bit of Waller. We're going to tight end for this week if I need to save either Arnold or Tyler Conklin. Let's go to defense. Finish up there. What you got?
I'm going to go with the Chiefs, 3,300. I don't think they'll be that popular. I think that they don't have the best case either, but at 3,300, that goes a long way. I think the perception of how bad their defense is will still get people away from them, and people who are playing Jordan Love aren't going to play the Chiefs either. Jordan Love's probably going to be like, I don't know,
10.
12%, 12% rostered or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They faced a lot of good quarterbacks, a litany, one might even say. Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. Could throw in Ryan Tannehill, maybe Baker in there, but against
pre-injury Baker, let's be clear here. There's a difference. This is like BC and AD, pre-injury, post-injury Baker.
But they played possibly comparable quarterbacks with Taylor Heineke and Daniel Jones, and their efficiency was not good against this team. So like you can rail on the Chiefs, but at least give them the benefit of the doubt with who they played. The bigger question is like, how many times will they drop back and create sack and turnover opportunities? That remains to be seen, but I still feel good enough with this offense to put up points and force the Packers to have to throw.
I think you go there in cash games just for the salary savings. Like, you just do that. For tournaments, I'm okay getting to the Cowboys because the Chiefs are kind of the obvious one, but the Broncos have been sacked on 8.3% of all their dropbacks, which is tied for the 4th highest mark in the league. The Cowboys have a volatile defense in the positive sense in that they hunt for turnovers, and you want volatile defenses that can get you those high upside plays. Dallas can do that. So I do like them a lot this week for 39. Prefer the Chiefs to save salary, but I am okay with the Cowboys as well. That is all that we have here for today on the Week 9 preview podcast. Brandon, any final thoughts before we send off people to fill out their lineups for this week?
Stay tuned to the news, but don't panic and only react to the new breaking situations. Not everyone is affected by some of these situations. You feel like literally every player is waiting on some key injury, but
correct.
That's not really the case. So don't get distracted from the Ravens if we get some breaking news that Saquon's going to play or something.
Oh my gosh, don't even put that in the ether of being a thing that could occur. Don't do this to me. You're right.
It's very easy to forget everything on Sunday morning or like Saturday night whenever we get some information.
Yeah. I think just like think through range of outcomes with these. What?
Cowboys receiver CeeDee Lamb sprained his ankle in practice yesterday. He will be limited today.
Oh, well, he's practicing today. He's fine.
Limited today.
Yeah, but he's practicing. He's fine.
You also don't want a receiver just sprain his ankle.
More work for Amari. Hey, he's fine.
Speaking of staying tuned to the news.
I thought you were going to expand. Okay, yeah.
That was obvious.
Maybe that'll keep that game closer for, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, this is terrible. I'm going to just like be sitting here paralyzed on Sunday morning, not knowing what to do. What I would say though, is think through range of outcomes on players with question marks. Like realistically, what is the ceiling for Jordan Love? What is the ceiling for Taysom Hill? What is the ceiling for name whoever you want? And ask yourself, is that enough? If so, cool, go for it. But like, you need to ask that question first. You need a ceiling out of each player in order to erase mistakes elsewhere and get that top score. So just think through that long and hard for this week. That is all the time that we have here for today on the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast. But as always, we got a lot of stuff here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed because we have NASCAR and UFC tomorrow. We have NBA, NHL every single day via Tom Vecchio. We have PGA weekly on Tuesdays, and our Week 9 recap podcast will be on Monday, 9 a.m. on the FanDuel YouTube page and up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed immediately after that. So make sure you subscribe. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I'm at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for this week. Good luck to you with your Week 9 lineups. We'll talk to you once again on Monday to wrap it all up. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.